You know, when someone says Einstein, what pops into your head? Probably the wild hair, maybe E equals mc squared, right? But there's a much deeper, more human story behind the icon. We're going to get past the myth and find the man, the student who didn't quite fit in, the patent clerk with a secret, and the world's citizen.
Our whole story really pivots on one single incredible year. The year is 1905. A man who's only 26 years old is about to publish a set of papers that will completely flip science on its head and change how we see the universe forever.
And this is where it gets so interesting. The guy doing this? He wasn't some celebrated professor at a famous university. No, he was a civil servant working a day job at a patent office in Bern, Switzerland. So you have to ask yourself, how did this total unknown manage to rewrite the laws of the cosmos from his desk drawer?
In what we now call his miracle year, he put out 4 papers that were just revolutionary. One tackled the true nature of light. Another basically proved atoms were real by watching tiny particles move. And then there were the big ones, laying the foundation for his theory of relativity and for the mind-blowing connection between mass and energy. And with just these 4 publications, the name Einstein was about to become shorthand for genius.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll take a closer look at that miracle year of 1905. Then we'll hit rewind and see how this unlikely genius came to be. We'll also get into the clash between his amazing career and his complicated personal life. And finally, we'll see how the scientist became a voice for all of humanity.
So Einstein's day job was literally to look at other people's inventions. But behind the scenes, he was working on his own world-shattering ideas. He actually joked that his desk drawer at the patent office was his own private Bureau of Theoretical Physics.
One of those papers from 1905 introduced his special theory of relativity. And here's the absolute core of it. Einstein said that things we all assume are constant, like time and distance, are actually not. They're relative. They can stretch and shrink depending on how fast you're moving. So you could have 2 perfectly good clocks, but if one is moving super fast, they'll actually end up showing different times. It's a seriously mind-bending idea.
And right out of that theory of relativity drops this, the most famous equation in the world. It showed a stunning, hidden truth about the universe, that mass is really just an incredibly concentrated form of energy, and that even a tiny, tiny speck of mass could, in theory, be converted into a tremendous burst of power.
So, this is the big question, right? Where on earth did this kind of thinking come from? Because if you look at his childhood, you would never, ever have guessed he was going to be, Einstein. In fact, a headmaster once told his dad exactly that. It didn't matter what young Albert did for a living because, quote, he'll never make a success at anything. Has there ever been a more spectacularly wrong prediction in all of history? I don't think so.
I mean, seriously, the early signs of genius, they just weren't there. His own family was worried. His mom thought his head was oddly large. He didn't even start talking till he was almost 3. Other kids thought he was so dull they called him Brother Boring. He absolutely hated the rigid by-the-book school system and was way more interested in his mechanical toys. So much so that when his little sister Maya was born, his first question was, yeah, but where are her wheels?
So this was not an overnight success story. His incredible talent for math and physics got him into university in Zurich. But even after graduating in 1900, his rebellious nature left him unemployed. It took 2 long years to finally land that job at the patent office. And then, just 3 years later, boom, he changed physics forever.
But it's really important to know he wasn't completely alone on this journey. At university, he met Mileva Maric, who was a brilliant physics student herself, and he saw her as a true intellectual partner. Their letters that survive are this incredible mix of romance and hardcore physics. They just show this shared, burning desire to figure out the universe's secrets together.
And this brings us to a really deep conflict in Einstein's life. Because just as he was figuring out the biggest problems of the cosmos, his own personal cosmos was kind of falling apart. Just look at the 2 sides of his life here, side by side. On the one hand, this incredible public triumph. In 1915, he publishes his masterpiece, The General Theory of Relativity. In 1919, an eclipse proves him right, making him a global celebrity overnight. Then he gets the Nobel Prize.
But on the other side of the coin, his personal life was a wreck. His mother never liked Mileva. As his fame skyrocketed, her own scientific dreams got lost in his shadow. Their marriage crumbled and then divorced in 1919, the exact same year his fame exploded. He would go on to marry his cousin, Elsa.
In the final chapter of his life, Einstein's world shifted dramatically again. After the Nazis rose to power in Germany, he left for the United States, and his role began to change from just a scientist to a true global conscience.
And this chain of events here would have consequences for the entire planet. 5 years after he got to America, a terrifying discovery was made back in Berlin. Scientists had figured out nuclear fission. The physicists who had fled fascism were horrified. The fear was immediate. The Nazis could build an atomic bomb. Pushed by his peers, Einstein knew he had to act.
So he did something only he could do. He used his incredible fame to send a direct warning to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. This quote from his letter is just chillingly precise. He's saying one bomb could wipe an entire port off the map. Those words landed like a thunderclap and directly led to the U.S. starting its own secret race to build the bomb first.
But when the United States actually dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Einstein was devastated. The unimaginable power he'd once described in an elegant equation was now a real-world force of destruction. He spent the rest of his life campaigning passionately against the very arms race he felt he had helped to start, fighting for peace, and even a world government to control these terrible weapons.
So by the time he passed away in 1955, his legacy was really twofold. Yes, he was the genius who redefined our reality, but he was just as celebrated for being a visionary, a world citizen who truly understood the heavy responsibility that comes with having that kind of knowledge.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Einstein's life seems to show that being a genius isn't just about coming up with brilliant ideas. It's also about wrestling with what those ideas might become in the real world. And it forces us to ask, what is the true responsibility of those who can see things and create things that the rest of us can't?